All right, guys, welcome to the session with Sharran Srivatsaa. Sharran is the president of Telus Properties, and Telus Properties is a powerhouse. They are a power player in a regional market in primarily Southern California. They have 21 locations right now. They do primarily only luxury listings. They are number one in their market for highest sale price to list price ratio. They are number one in their market for lowest days on the market. And Sharran's personal background is that he was a venture capitalist and was part of the investors who had invested in Telus Properties, saw an incredible opportunity in it, and then transferred over to Telus Properties, became the president of the company, and they have been on a fast-paced growth curve since then. As a matter of fact, last year in 2016, they did a little over $3 billion in sales in 1 year. So they are kicking butt. They know what they're doing. And Sharran and I today are going to dive deep into just a variety of strategic things, from listing presentation and what are some of the things important there. We're going to talk about something interesting they do as a management policy that he told me about that I thought was really interesting, and I want to unpack that a little bit. So the value here is whether you're an agent or a team leader building a business, both categories are going to get a lot of value out of this conversation with Sharran. With that, Sharran, welcome to the Get Listing Summit.
Andrey, thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here. And I want to just make a quick note to the listener that putting this on is a tough beat, is a tough task. Nailing down people to talk to, making sure that they're prepped so you can bring great value is a very tough thing to do. And you've done this with so many people and you're bringing great value. And for that, my hat's off to you and I thank you for that.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate it. It's, the 101 things I didn't know about putting on a summit before I started. So getting a little extra gray hair by the day. But I believe that ultimately it's going to be rewarding. A lot of amazing agents have already registered, and they're giving me encouragement. Actually, they're excited. So the community feel is starting to happen. I mean, by this point, when this goes live, it's already happening, but it's starting to happen for me now, and it's making me excited. It's making me fall in love with it again. So yeah.
Well, I think that's the joy, right? As you create more value and you see the value being impactful, that's when it really starts to when you get the true inspiration to create more value, to dig deeper, to unpack more, to give more. And I think it gives you a better sense of the audience, so you can really pinpoint and impact them more on a day-to-day basis. So kudos to you and thank you for having me on.
Yeah, thank you. I want to actually start off with kind of a story arc that you and I have discussed when you and I got introduced to each other. And that is this, that, a lot of agents spend a lot of money, time, effort, sweat, blood, and tears, as the cliche goes, on generating leads, generating opportunities, regardless of how that is, whether that's prospecting, buying leads, whatever it may be. But every, listing opportunities can start in different ways, but they all of them ultimately end up having one shared thing for sure. And that is this: a listing appointment, a listing presentation, right? No matter how the arc starts, it always ends up there. And that is typically, like you had said, Andrey, a lot of agents do all this effort, but then when they get to the listing appointment, it's like the throwing up, right? Like they vomit, like there's fear of failure for sure, right? All this work, and what if I don't get the listing? But that's kind of like, that's it. That's if do or die right there. I want to unpack that because I know you guys have some pretty incredible best practices around what it takes to win listing presentations. If I remember the numbers correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this process that we're going to talk about and kind of just the framework that we're going to talk about, it worked to win 95% of your guys' listing appointments in 2016, and you guys went on 214. Was it listing appointments in 2016 in a luxury market?
Right. So the story, actually, I'll do the very quick high level. The story about 24 months ago, Andrey, came up when my partner, Peter Hernandez, and I, we're non-selling principals. So we don't carry a book of business. We don't sell. And we would get a lot of feedback from our agents saying, this is what we're actually getting asked in listing appointments. How would you answer a question like this? And all of those questions and answers seemed like we had a great opportunity to have impact and educate the client, the agents. And so we would role play and things like that. But then we decided that my partner and I decided that we would go on these appointments. So we did it in a very structured way. So we went on 161 listing appointments over an 18-month period.
Okay.
We won
this was you and Peter separately going on listing with agents. You're basically ghosting agents.
Exactly right. So we're going as, backup singer support. So we went 161 listing appointments. We won 152 out of 161, which was a 94.5% success rate. And these were across price points, across geographies, across agents. And we did something very unique because we said, we're not just going to go on these appointments. We're going to do it with good process. So we said, before the appointment, we're actually going to do a prep call. Like, however, crazy that might sound, it's okay to do a little prep. So we actually did a prep call, and then we would prepare. I mean, we'd ask the same 8 to 10 tough questions as to why are we doing this? What's the personality of the seller, et cetera. Then we would come up with a flow for the appointment, because we found that when you're in appointments and you can manage a flow well, it makes the client feel like you have your stuff together. And then after every appointment, we debriefed. And what I want to tell you about is this debriefing process, because after every single listing appointment, we stopped and said, I wrote down every single question every single seller ever asked us in a listing appointment. So I have 161 appointments worth of questions that sellers have asked us. So essentially, I would say that I probably have a data file, an Evernote file of every single question every single seller has asked us. So we said, wow, there's got to be a pattern here. So partner, Peter, we put all the questions out in a chunked way on a whiteboard and said, there's got to be a pattern in how we're approaching this. And we found that all of these questions generally centered around 10 topics. So we threw out all our listing materials and we rebuilt our entire presentation. And in a cliche way, I call it our 10-page black book, but the book is very specific. It's very specific to our firm. I've shared it at the Tom Ferry Summit with thousands of agents from a structure perspective. But essentially, the best practice is that there's 10 things that they want to talk about. There's a flow to those 10 things. And we don't script the agents on the 10 things. It's just a guide and a framework to walk through the process. So imagine this. You walk into a listing appointment and I say, Andrey, we've been on 161 appointments. We took all the questions that our clients have asked us. And we found that there are only 10 things that a client want to talk about. You may want to talk about more, but these 10 things end up being the core things that clients want to talk about. Here are these 10 things. Would you like me to just quickly walk you through them? And then we can tackle anything that you want to talk about. If you did that as a setup, as a frame to the appointment, it completely changes the nature of the appointment, because what people want to do, what the average agent does is will walk in and say, oh, Andrey, great to meet you. Thank you for having me. What do you want to accomplish today? Well, what the heck? Like, you just invited me to your living room, to your house, and you're asking me what I want to accomplish today. You're asking me as a seller such a wide, vague, non-structured question that you've already put them on the defensive, and you as an agent have not pulled out any information that you can actually do anything with. And so just the framing of the beginning has done so much for us. And we've seen our agents just win so much more because they walk in with so much confidence, given that they have good structure when they approach an appointment like that.
So you're saying when your agents now go into the listing appointment, they go in and they open the conversation by setting the frame with hey, we've been on 161 listing appointments. We have all the questions, and there's a lot of things we can talk about today, but there's typically 10 things that we find that are of important value to you as a homeowner, and that's what we're going to talk about first. Is that kind of how you do it?
Let me run through those with you, and then I'll tackle anything else if it doesn't come up, right? And so at least you're giving yourself a roadmap for the conversation, and that way also, a seller will say, well, Andrey, just tell me what my home's worth, or just tell me about price, or what do you charge? And you say, oh, interesting that you asked that. That is always the number 7 thing. If I can frame the first 6, I think you'll see a lot of value in that. So now you can actually, without making them feel slighted, you can actually softly defer that, because a lot of times what agents will say is, oh yeah, I'll get to that, but you've never framed why you'll get to that. So it makes the client feel slighted, and they're like, hey, you're doing a sales tactic and pushing me off.
Got it. Okay. What do you have that handy? Do you want to go through the list of the 10 questions?
We can, but I don't, dude. I did this. I have it right here.
Oh, perfect. Okay, awesome. Let's bullet point through them briefly. We don't have necessarily a real role playing script, but I'm just curious to hear these 10 things.
Yeah. So I'll actually not frame them as questions. I'll frame them as topics, because
perfect.
Are very specific to us as a firm. And so let me give you the generic topics. Right. The first thing most people want to talk about is they want to figure out why you. Why are you there? What qualifies you to be good? So if you can't actually say, hey, Andre, there are 450 homes in this neighborhood. Out of these 450 homes, the average sales price is 1.3 million. Every year, 7 of these homes sell, and I sell 4 of these 7 homes every single year. Now that's showing social proof. That's showing that you know what you're doing. That's answering the why you question.
Got it. Okay.
If you can't answer the why you question, you might as well leave, because you have not anchored with anything of, hey, let me actually prove that I have the credibility to be here, right?
Got it.
That credibility has to be structured with some kind of knowledge, because you can't just say, I'm number one, I'm number one, I'm number one, because everybody says they're number one. But if you can share it with some kind of information, such as there are 450 homes in this neighborhood, the sales price to risk price ratio is this, velocity is this. Now you're educating while you're telling them why you're good, right? So that if you can frame the why you with education, then it actually makes the client feel like you're not selling them. So that's number one, kind of why me, right? The second thing is, when you say why you, and of course you're going to say why you, and you being very good, people will immediately go to marketing. Immediately, it's the first thing people go to marketing. So, but the phrasing here is this, Andrey, the number one thing that we can do well is to sharpen our axe before we actually cut down the tree. And the way you sharpen your axe is to not figure out how you're going to market, but who you're going to market to. Buyer profiling is actually way more, buyer profiling, buyer personas, avatars. Buyer profiling is way more important than what you actually do to reach that person. So let's actually talk about why you, Andrey, bought your home. You bought your home, Andrey, 7 years ago. Isn't that right? Yes. Oh, what did you pay for it? Oh, you paid 1.3 million. Oh, it's really grown up in value. So now you can actually do a fact-finding discovery component where I've asked you why you bought your home, when you bought your home, what it is for. I can check it against title. I can do so much more of that during the process in such a soft way, right?
Right.
So number 2 is really understanding the buyer persona, buyer profile around it.
Okay.
Number 3 is when you actually say, okay, now I've got the buyer persona. What do I actually do with it? Hey, can I come up with an integrated marketing campaign to reach this buyer persona? How does that work, right? And now this is when you have the opportunity to say, this is what I do for marketing. Before, this is what I do for sales. This is how I actually, but it's got to be all done within the context of that buyer profile. Otherwise, what's the use for it? I mean, what is a great saying? It said, if everybody is your target market, nobody is your target market.
Right. Yeah.
So now it actually gives somebody the edge to say, hey, I'm gonna write copy this way. I'm gonna take photos this way. I'm gonna advertise this way. I'm gonna market this way, because the millennial buyer is not reading the Daily Pilot or the LA Times or whatever. So that's number 3, right? I'll fly through the last few with you. The 4th one is generally why you have so if I told you, hey, I'm going to do all this for marketing, the first kind of objection people generally have is like, well, how are you going to do that? Do you have a staff? Do you have a technology platform? Why are you equipped to do that? How much money are you going to spend? Do you have experience in this? So some proof around, hey, I have a platform that does this, or I have tools that do this. I have vendors that do this. I have a team that does this. I've done this so many times. Here are examples of what I've done. So now you're showing proof of what you said you were going to do. So the number 4 is more like, hey, how do I actually make this come to life? The 5th one we found, and Andrey, this is probably more in our marketplaces, it's probably not the right one for middle America as a whole, is there's a big international buyer component where we live.
Okay.
And so to me, it's not just the international buyer component. To me, wherever you are in the States, it's about addressing who's the non-local buyer. Who is the non-local buyer? Are they local, regional, national? Are they international? Do they exist? Why do they exist? What brings them to the area? And can I articulate why it's going to be either a local, regional, national, international buyer? So I have a friend in the Colorado Springs market, for example. 90% of her buyers are from the military. So if she doesn't have great military relations, she's going to have no buyer pool research whatsoever. So the ability to articulate that becomes really important.
Gotcha. Okay.
Essentially, if you can hit these 5, you are so far ahead of the game, because you've established such a great structure of validity and focus that it makes everything seem a lot less. The last few, I'll actually combine a lot of them. The last few are, after that is when you're talking about market dynamics. Hey, what's actually going on in the market right now? And after that, you talk about pricing. So a lot of times people will talk about pricing before they talk about the market. But if you talk about the market dynamics before you talk about pricing, then it makes sense. So
it's 6 would be market dynamics, and then 7 is pricing.
Correct. So the market dynamics, the interesting component is, here's the key takeaway. If you can explain to your client very, very simply, the relationship between actives, pendings, and solds. I will tell you this, 90% of agents today, 90% of agents do not have the ability to explain the relationship between what is active, what is pending, and what is sold and why. So for example, if they're 10 active, 300 pending, and 20 sold, that just means that means something very different than if there are 300 active and 10 pending, right?
Right.
So, but the ability to actually explain that relationship is great for clients, because you can say, hey, Andrey, I know you want to bring your home on the market right now. There's only 10 active listings and on 300 in escrow or in pending. Our strategy should be this because of this reason. Not just, hey, we should because everybody just wants to get their home on the market, but showing that relationship. Every time we have gone about explaining the relationship between actives, pendings, and solds has blown every client away. And they always
I've never
tell us,
heard this
wow,
myself, though. Like, I've never even heard this myself, to explain the relationship of active, pending, and sold to. I mean, I've heard about market dynamics, come with market reports, all these stuff, but this specific little focus, I think this is something that you can do in any market. This matters in any market. And yeah, you're right. And this can really help you to pre-frame the pricing conversation.
Exactly, right? So now pricing becomes a lot easier, right? Now you can say, hey, Andrey, I just told you that there were 300 homes on the market and only 10 in escrow. You want to list this for, 19.7 million?
Right.
So now the client himself or herself will not make a fool of themselves by telling you a stupid price, because you just framed the conversation that they shouldn't tell you one.
Well, where my mind is, and tell me if I'm wrong, where I'm going with this too in my mind is, typically we try to, agents in a listing appointment try to make the pricing argument, if there is an argument over it, based upon comps. But this is almost like you're saying comps in a vacuum can be kind of almost literally can still be kind of subjective, but comps as compared to where the trend is headed or in terms of what's happening can kind of also set up the agent to also be able to say, look, these are the current comps when you look at it as just still numbers, but here's what's happening as a story in the market, and your home is part of that story. So looking at just comps isn't just because your neighbor sold for 19 million or for 300,000, 6 months ago or 3 months ago, things happen in the market. And right now we have, 300 actives and we only have 15 pending. So the market is softening up big time, right? Yeah, I like that. You can frame the comps in a story now.
Well, and you're spot on, because I'll tell you this, you talk about comps. Never has an agent ever won a comps discussion. You will never win a comps discussion, ever.
Well, because it's data versus emotion. Like, you're just never going to win that conversation. There's no way to win it.
Right. So you're either you completely agree or you completely disagree, right? And with the clients, and you will never. And the clients always believe that their home is worth more than what you think it is. It's generally always the case. And there is no nice way to say, hey, Andrey, you know what? The home next door, I know they sold for $300 more per square foot, or they got another $1 million, but they have a view that's a little better than yours. Like, that's you can't tell a client that in a nice way, regardless of your relationship, right? You just cannot do that. But agents will try, and I have seen the energy in the appointments just completely tank when they start. And here's the other thing: when you go through comps, and I know in your practice maybe you've done this. Very few agents have mastered the art of managing the comps discussion without having just a jungle gym of papers. Oh, I got a copy for you. Here, you should, on page 3, actually look at that photo. That photo is terrible. But on page 8, oh, well, I got another one here. I wrote something on here for you. I actually did some. It is the most disorganized way of presenting anything, because you have no idea how to present it. There is no way to present the comps to prove a point, because at the end of the day, if the client says, hey, I know my home, I know the market says 1.6, but I want to list my home for 1.7, there's a good chance you're going to take it. Like, let's just be very real, right? And so however much you prove to the client the comps are what they are, the client's going to want to at least have a significant influence in the sales price.
So give me an example of how I would present the comps. What is the most effective way to present? What's the most intelligent way to present the comps in a way that sets me up to then talk about the active, pending, sold narrative?
Great question. So the way you talk about the comps is this. Andrey, I actually spent a significant amount of time doing the market research because I wanted to come here prepared. And after digging into the comps, I find a very skewed relationship between the actives, pending, and sold. So I've actually put this report together for you. I know it's about 18 pages. You can read it at your leisure. However, right on top, if you see, I've pulled together the 10 top highlights, which is an executive summary that actually will guide our discussion. Do you mind if we go through these 10 top highlights? That's how you present comps. Now, You're framing them to listen to the 10 top highlights that you walked through. They will never flip the page. And you're framing it even further by every single time telling them your insights from the comps. The next agent coming by is going to do the comp paper shuffle. And then they're going to say, wow, when Sharran came in, he was so organized. He even gave us his insights. Man, he really knows his stuff about the market.
Gotcha. Okay. I like that. And then you would go into talk, and part of that conversation is actually, so that is the comp conversation. It's comps along with active, pending, sold relationship altogether.
Right. And so, yeah, I think what's going to happen is when you set up market dynamics and you go into pricing, between those two kind of slides or topics, you're going to end up talking about comps at some point.
Right.
And so it's a lot better to frame the market with the market dynamics, start talking about the comparables because that's what competition is, and then narrow down on pricing.
And so then what is the best way to open up the pricing conversation?
Yeah, the pricing conversation.
Have a number in your mind. Do you just literally in your guys for winning 95, having a 95% batting rate? If you know that, because you obviously know what the home, as the agent going on the listing appointment, you know what the home should be optimally priced at. Like you already know that before the listing appointment. So if I know that it should be $1.7 million, if I know that it should be $475,000, after the market dynamic conversation and the comps and the active pending sold conversation that I go, and that's why, and based upon all this, so do I just say, and based upon all this information, the optimal selling price is $475,000? Like, do I just tell them?
Yeah, yes and no, right? I think that's where the finesse comes in. So I'd say when you want what I found the best practices around pricing is to allow pricing to be a collaborative discussion, right? And so if you can, I always like to talk to clients about using pricing. The list price is an invitation.
Okay.
Right? The list price is an invitation. So if your home, if you, Andrey, as the agent, believe the market value of the home is 1.7 million and you list it at 1.9, you're basically have that's not the warmest invitation. If it's 1.7 and you listed at 1.4, that's a darn good invitation to a lot of people. So you're just asking the client, hey, think of the sales list price as an invitation. Now let's talk about two things. Number one, let's discover where do you need to, that's when the discovery conversation is. Andrey, when you sell, where are you going to go? When you go, because what I'm looking for, like I want to say, oh, you want to move to Seattle? Great. Let me get a referral fee for what I refer you to Seattle, because that's a free 25% for me. So I want to see what you're going next, what your motivation is. Do you have time? And you can say, oh, I want to be, it's Sharran, it's January now. I want to be in Seattle by June. You can say, okay, Andrey, you have 5 months. So we have to be very thoughtful on how we use the list price as an invitation given these market dynamics. So if you want to be out of this home, sold and closed, and into your home in Seattle in 5 months, you have 3 optimal pricing strategies. Number one, you can list aspirationally, which is higher than what the market says. Number two, you can list in a perceived market value. And number 3, you can list, in what we call event-based pricing. I would say aspirational pricing would take more time. Are you okay waiting till this home sells August, September, or October? Now they're like, well, no, this has to sell by June. Well, if this has to sell by June, then we have to try something in the other 2 pricing ranges. Which one would you be more comfortable with? So you're almost giving them the range, and then you can narrow in on the price.
I want to make sure that I don't gloss over the words that you just used to describe that pricing. You described it as aspirational pricing, perceived market value pricing, or event-based pricing.
Correct.
That's such a sneaky good way to phrase those 3 things.
Well, thanks. But here's the other thing. A lot of times agents would say, well, your market value of your home is 1.7 million. Well, no, it's not.
Yeah. Well, you don't want to also say, well, let's price it below the market. Like if you say that phrase to a seller, they're like no seller is going to say, I want a price below the market. Like no seller on earth is going to want to do that.
Yeah.
But event-based pricing is like, well, it's an invitation. It's an event. We could get competition going, et cetera. Like, okay, I like that.
I think when it comes to sensitive parts of the conversation, when it comes to conversation that tugs on their purse strings or tugs on their emotions, language patterns become very important.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And you picked up on that, right? And so perceived market value is extremely, we found that to be more important, because a potential buyer's agent is going to come in and say, Andrey, I think this home, based on, if I were your agent, I would say this home was worth somewhere in the $1.7 million price. That is a perceived market value. They have not been in it or anything. And so that way, when you say market value, you're also not establishing a market value to it. Only a potential buyer establishes a market value. So you got to create some separation between what you think the market value is and what the perception is.
Mm-hmm. I like that. That's powerful.
I'll tell you this, right? So one of my good friends, who's one of our executives at our firm, I think if we take a pause and the agents listening to this conversation want to really, really think about their role in the transaction, I'll give you this phrase. He always tells me, a seller is looking for a buyer and a buyer is looking for a home. Like, don't overcomplicate the process. It is our job to facilitate that. A seller is looking for a buyer and a buyer is looking for a home. Do not overcomplicate the process. So when you're in a living room and you're talking to a seller is looking for a buyer. A seller is not looking to hire you. A seller is not looking for a process. A seller is looking for a buyer. So if every part of your conversation doesn't in some daisy chained way lead to framing the seller, making them more comfortable that you're helping them look for a buyer, you're losing them every step of the way. That's why the buyer persona conversation is super important to anchor up front.
Got it. That is powerful. Yeah, that's actually a really good point.
If after you go through pricing, what I've noticed a lot of times is this is when you have like a little breather to kind of talk about the wild cards. Some people will say, let me tell you a few things about my team that are different, or let me tell you a few things about the market that are different, or, hey, your home as a wine cellar, I want to market it differently. I want to get some PR. The wild cards are important, and I want to give some structure to that, because what generally happens, Andrey, is that let's say you walk into a beautiful home that has a beautiful wine cellar, a great stairwell, whatever, great views. Agents will immediately talk about that stuff up front in the first 20 minutes of the conversation, because they're like, oh, you got a great home, beautiful Tuscan doors, I love your pool, your wine cellar is fantastic. And basically what you're doing is you're completely misaligning expectations on pricing with the client on unique features, not on the unchangeables of the home that drive value.
So a lot
of times I like just going to the fact of saying, hey, listen, how do we get to the wild card conversation and say, hey, your home is unique this way, or we do things unique. It's just a mixed bag where you can, all that stuff that you prep that you wanted to vomit, this is the time, right? Like stuff what you didn't get in, this is the time to do that, because you need some place to do that.
So number 8 is wild cards.
Right, number 8 is wild cards.
Got it. And then 9 and 10?
So number 9 and 10 to me, number 9 to me is extremely crucial, and I only believe that the top 20% of the market can do it well. And it is explaining the contract to close process. I will tell you 9 out of 10 appointments that I've been on, no agents do not explain what happens when a home goes under contract. I mean, all the money, all the magic, all the invisible power of the agent happens from contract to close.
Right.
I mean, you can throw something on the market, get it under contract, but you've got the ability to negotiate inspection contingencies. Maybe there's an appraisal loan contingency. There's so much that you can do for a client in contract to close. I mean, just explaining how you run a multiple offer process could be the difference between picking you versus picking another agent. And the funny part is agents will tell me, I have this really robust multiple offer process. I get more money for my clients. I go, great. We've been on 14 listing appointments and you never mentioned it once. That's crazy to me, right? The clients have no idea what happens contract to close. They have no idea because Zillow doesn't teach them what it is. They don't research it. That is why they need us the most, because that's the most significant part of the process. There's so many vendors and service providers involved in that process that the clients can't keep them straight. And only the agents know when an inspector should be called, when an appraiser should be called, who should be met, when a title report changes hands. Only then the agent knows that stuff. The explaining kind of the intricacy of contract to close, and how you as an advisor, not as a marketeer anymore, how you as an advisor are going to guide them through that process. And maybe even earn your entire fee back during that process. Like in a $400,000 transaction, I could earn 1.5% back when instead of being negotiated down 1.5% if I'm doing my job correctly.
Got it.
And the best part, Andrey, about the whole thing is you will get zero pushback, zero questions in the contract to close process. So you can actually rehearse it for 2-3 minutes and deliver it with extreme confidence and clarity every time. You could have the same spiel and deliver your contract to close process because you will never get any pushback because they have no idea what you're talking about.
Right. And to you, I think for a lot of agents, to agents, it's like fish in the water. Like you don't see the water. Like it's just what you live and breathe every day. But to the client, it's all new, and it could be all intimidating. It could all be intimidating, right? Just because it's the transaction is so incredibly important to them, right? The successful sale of their home is so important to them. They don't know all these things that can come up.
Right. Exactly.
That's like you're saying. You start building up your own perceived value from their perception when you're explaining the 101 things that you would go through in doing that.
Right. And so I will tell you this, if there's anything that I can explain, if you told me, hey, Sharran, stop everything that you're doing. You walk in, you have 3 minutes. What would be the only thing you would talk about? I would only talk about contract to close. I would talk about nothing else. Because even if there were a FSBO, the number one reason why FSBO deals fail is not because they're a FSBO. The number one reason why FSBO deals fail is because they have no representation and they fall out of contract. That is the number one reason. Contract to close is the most important part of the process. That is why we get hired. That's why we get paid. We are an advisor, and all agents believe is that they are marketeers. The cool font, their agent branding, their brand name, their group name. Oh, I'm so awesome. Like, that's great. Who cares? If you can't deliver value contract to close, you suck, right?
Right.
You're too terrible.
Right.
So I think the best part is you can rehearse the whole thing.
Yeah. And I just like the part that's never going to be really a conversation. That's just going to be an explanation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. And how fun is this, Andrey? Wouldn't it be amazing if you walk into a living room and always know that there are like 4 parts of the conversation that you're never going to get any pushback on? How great is that? Right. So you always know that you're going to nail those parts of the conversation. You always know that. That should give us as agents, like us as real estate professionals, extreme confidence because you're not getting pushed on every single thing in the living room.
Right. I love that. Okay. And number 10 is?
See, the 10's the most complex part. And I use 10 as a discovery for who else I'm up against and what the market competition is. So I use the time to talk about what the local market's like from a competition perspective. And I say, Andrey, I know I've talked to you about all of this. I hope it's been insightful and you have significant value. I'm just curious. Are you interviewing other professionals? After you've delivered all that value and you ask that question, they will tell you. They'll say, oh, no, you came referred to us. Oh, I'm talking to 2 other people. Oh, I'd love to know who they are. You don't need to tell me their names. I'd love to know who they are. Are they a regional firm? Are they a national firm? Something that I know, and I'm only doing it for one reason. Only doing it for one reason. So if you told me, hey, I'm talking to a one-man local shop and I'm talking to an international firm, great. And I say, have you already met with them? They'll say, yeah. I say, great. Well, tell me one thing you liked about them. So I'm trying to do a lot of discovery, right?
Okay.
And the only value there, Andrey, is so that when I leave that appointment, I have an opportunity to do some follow-up, to do some homework. And I can say in my follow-up email, I don't say, Andrey, thank you for your time. I say, Andrey, thank you for your time. In addition to what I shared, I know with the international firm that you're talking to, they have claimed an international network. Here's ours, and here's a direct result. However, the one person from that you're talking to may not have the reach for the buyer that you bring from the external county, and here are my results. It gives me an opportunity to tackle that objection later without being in the living room and pounding them.
Got it.
So the discovery of who your competition is only so that I can do good follow-up after.
So here's one thing, and maybe this is a little bit different in the luxury market, right? When you're dealing with it with $1 million plus listings, but there's one thing, and let me play devil's advocate with you a little bit. There's one thing that, from my perspective, and maybe I missed it, but there's one thing that seems to be missing from this framework: the close, the call to action, the asking for the listing. It's probably a little bit different, maybe in a very high-end luxury market. But walk me through how you guys then ask for the listing, because if you can get the listing right there and then, you don't want to walk out and follow up. That's my perspective, right? You don't want to have to be following up if you can close it right there.
Yeah. So I think that's I've seen it's a great question. I've seen how that works. So in a middle market price point, you can close harder,
Right.
right? You could say, but you've got to close with value creation, right? You've got to close with it. What a lot of people say is, hey, hire me and put me to work. Like, come on, are you serious? Hire me and put me to work as your close? Like, that's crazy. That makes no sense, because so the other guy said, hire me and put me to close as well, right? And it's like, oh, if you buy now, I'll give you. No, the close has to be with value creation. So I'll give you an example for a close. The close generally happens when people always talk about objections. There are no objections. They're just unanswered questions. As soon as you hit the unanswered questions, you'll see a light go off. I will tell you, Andrey, in our discussions, on average, when we hit slides, part 6 or part 7, the meeting's done. The meeting's done. Like, I'd say average meeting, 25 minutes. Meeting's done. It's done. And then we're just starting to talk about process. So the way you close, in my opinion, is very personality based. For example, if you in those 25, 30 minutes have not sized up your client on what kind of person they are, call it a disc profile, or call it are they an analyzer, enterpriser, motivator, or togetherness, whatever emotional kind of structure you want to use. So it's very hard to get the right close. So for example, if you're talking to a CPA or an attorney, the right close is, have I given you enough information for us to take the next step? Because they think in terms of sequential and steps, right? If you're talking to a CEO of a big company, you could say, based on this, would you change the strategy on how we approach selling your home? Right?
Got it.
If you're talking to somebody emotional, I can't wait to work with you. This is going to be a fun process, and I can't wait when we hand the keys over to the buyer. That's a togetherness. That's like, hey, an older couple that just want to love you. The close, everybody thinks about, they memorize these sales lines and they memorize these scripts and they deliver them saying, hire me and put me to work. It is the most sleaziest thing. And it's the number one thing that gives our industry a bad name, because people always say, oh, you got to ask for the order 7 times, because generally that's like, no, you got to value create 300 times so that they have no other choice but to hire you. That's the value, right? And so but whenever you hit an emotional, whenever you hit a personality-centric, personality alignment in the closing language pattern, you get significant value out of that. So telling a CEO or telling an older couple, hey, let me follow up tomorrow with an email with our next 7 steps is stupid. They don't care. That's not how they think, right? They want to go hang out with their grandchildren. But if you told a CPA or an attorney, let me put together the next 7 steps, and so along with the contract, they're like, oh, that sounds great, and I'll come back to you with questions. You can do small. So now you've actually taken over homework and you've given them responsibility, because they're now waiting on you on something, and they're professionals, and they won't just pick someone else because you're already working on something.
How far do you push a meeting for verbal commitments if there's not a close in the meeting, in the listing appointment, and there's going to be follow-up? How a lot of agents probably in that whole vomit consciousness, right? The mindset is like, well, so I could just imagine agents being like, okay, well, what I'll do is I'll follow up and we'll do 1, 2, 3, and then and then we'll go from there. We'll go from there. Just that hurried, like, I don't want rejection, so I'm just going to gloss through it and just be uneasy. Now, I would imagine I would slow down. I would let you gaze into my soft brown eyes, and I would look for some sort of actual, real eye contact commitment. So a verbal commitment while looking in your eyes. Would that be the right approach? Like, are you establishing some sort of commitment so it starts to kind of bond them to you psychologically and emotionally and make it harder to say no to you if they're still going to discuss you and the other 2 agents?
Yeah. So you're spot on, right? So let me zoom out for a second. So there is a very transactional centric mindset in our industry that says the way you succeed in real estate is based on 2 things: appointments and contracts. I'm sure you've heard of these at some point.
Never.
More appointments you get, appointments and contracts. It's missing a key piece there. It's not appointments and contracts. My partner, Peter Hernandez, always says it's appointments, relationships, and contracts, right? The key piece that's missing is the relationship piece. And that's exactly what you said. After you've delivered your presentation or that discussion, you have to humanize the close. You say, Andrey, I know we talked a lot about all these things, but I want to tell you a quick story. And you do it in a heartfelt way. I have a son. His name is Neil. He's 5 years old. Every time I come home, he runs and hugs me and he says, "Daddy, did you have a good day?" And I said, "Yes." "Daddy, did you help somebody today?" I said, "Yes." And you could say, "Andrey, I'm not going to tell you that I want to disappoint my son today, but all I want to tell you is it gives me a lot of pleasure, a lot of warmth to go home and tell my son that I'm doing this for something bigger than myself. And I'd love for an opportunity to serve you and serve your family. Feel no pressure, feel no obligation, because I want to make sure that my offering and my firm's offering and what I can do to bring you value and get you to your goals is the right fit for me." Based on what we've shared today, are there any questions that you have, or specifically, what homework can I take away to make you feel more comfortable in the process? Right? You got to humanize the close. And that's not memorized. I do that. This is what you do. Like, I can come up with 30 different stories, but you got to humanize the process, right? My son's on my mind because my son's sick, but you got to humanize the process. And at that point, you're not going to think I'm a jerk salesman, because I've been very honest with you. And I've also done one thing, which I slid something in there, which is, what can I do for homework? If you're going to punt me, I'm going to take away homework that you gave me, because you're going to feel extremely obligated for me to respond to homework before you make a decision. So you're not giving them homework. You're using the strategy of them giving you homework as a dynamic for them to now basically open up a time period for you to get back to them, because they are the ones that gave it to you. Correct. Exactly
that's an interesting persuasion strategy. It's technique.
Yeah. Because now they're going to feel bad if Jimmy came in after me and did the hard, fast close. They're like, hey, we can't do this. We have to get back to you. That we have to get back to you is because, hey, we told Sharran to go do some homework. Now we can't tell him to stop doing the homework, because it was the homework we gave him because we wanted to give him that, because we wanted more value from him.
So if you keep creating value in the conversation and you keep asking the question of, is there anything are there any questions that I haven't, is there information that I have not provided for you today that would keep us from taking the next step? And if you do that 5, 6, 7, whatever, 10 times, and it keeps to be more, and it ends up, however, playing out in the listing appointment that you leave, then you're looking for homework from them, because maybe you weren't able to answer some questions somehow.
Right, sure.
And what you're looking for then is you're going to create specific commitments around, okay, I am going to do, Sharran, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z for you. And I'm going to get back to you with all of this by X date, right? Is that how we're breaking it down then? So then you know what I'm doing, when I'm going to do it, when I'm going to bring it, so that then it kind of helps to protect me against the next guy coming in if he tries to go for the hard and fast close.
100%, right? And then that's when your immediate follow-up becomes really important, right? So then you get home or get to your car, you say, "Hey, Andrey, it was great to spend time with you. Just to recap, I promised that I would do these 6 things. Please look for an email and a package from me by 5 p.m. tomorrow." And I've just laid out what I'm going to do.
Got it.
And that's follow-up now, right? Like, that makes sense, as opposed to, "Thank you so much, and I'm going to send you chocolates." Like, this is stupid, and they're not hiring you as in our marketplaces, I think what our agents miss is, in our marketplaces, for a $1 million listing, you've got to walk in like you deserve $25,000. Let's say 20, like you can't even go to, I don't know, like, unless you go to Tiffany's, you're not buying anything for $25,000. So is that the value that you're commanding in the living room? Because it needs to be that good.
Right. Okay.
In the 2.5%, there's no number around it, but that's a big check that they're writing.
Yeah. Well, what I also like is that and I've said this in some other interviews, is that when you have a prepared process in place and you know where you're going, not only do you create more perceived value with the homeowner, but I also believe, and just from my own perspective, it would give me so much more confidence and certainty going into the meeting. And
right.
Certainty is contagious. It can be smelled, it can be felt, and uncertainty is just as it's like it's like animals. It's like a bear can smell fear on you, or it can smell that you're not afraid of it, right? The Maasai tribe, or whoever, the really tall people on the African plains, they walk with lions, and lions don't attack them, because they are made to walk around lions from birth, like from a toddler's age, by their parents, so they don't fear the lions. So literally out there, tourists are in the trucks watching this because they would have fear come off of them, and the lions will attack based upon that trigger. But they see these people walking around amongst the lions, and lions don't attack them because these people don't fear the lions. Right. It's the same way with this. I feel like when you're uncertain, people just pick up on it right away. They pick up on it. So if you can have more certainty, I think that goes a long ways towards just actually creating trust and value, right? Creating trust and communicating value, like to what you're saying about, are you walking in as somebody who's worth that check?
Right.
Right.
Well, yeah, you hit it spot on. And I think about it this way, right? Imagine this. I tell my agents this all the time. Imagine two agents walk into the living room. They say the exact same thing. They wear the exact same clothes. They have the exact same conversation. They do everything the exact same way. They bring the same exact value. Who wins? The person with more confidence and more swagger wins. Okay, everybody agrees. Now, how do you get more confidence and more swagger? Silence. And I go, there's only one way: preparation. There's only one way to get more confidence and more swagger, and that's preparation. When you have Alex Rodriguez, A-Rod, to step up and is ready to hit a baseball, or Tom Brady's ready to throw a pass. He has done that so many times. The confidence and swagger that exists comes from the preparation. All that we're doing in the prep, the only reason, like I have no materials in front of me. I can do this all day long. Is because I've done this over and over and over again. And when I'm driving in my car, I'm like, okay, so if a client asks me, how would I respond to this? And my wife thinks I'm crazy because I role play in the car all the time so I can get my language patterns down. I'm like, oh, that didn't sound right. I do it again. I record myself. Oh, that didn't sound right. And then once you get it, you say the same thing over and over again until someone gives you feedback to do it better. The other thing, Andrey, and I think you hit it spot on, was if you don't prepare, you also have no ability to improve. Meaning, let's say you have a process and then you get an idea. Now you can insert it in that process somewhere. If you have no process and you get an idea, you have no place to insert it. You're like, oh yeah, I should think about that sometime, right? So it doesn't allow you to iteratively get better in any way. So now our entire firm over the last 2 years has given us a ton of feedback on our 10-page book, on our process and our presentation. And we've completely redone all our scripting, all our language patterns. So I am today, I'd say 10x better than what I was 18 months ago, because we've gotten so much feedback on that same structure.
Gotcha. That makes sense. All right. Well, I feel like we've really unpacked that really well. We're now limited on time. It's amazing how time flies when you're having fun. But I want to switch over to asking you this, or bringing this up, and then having you share your thinking behind it, especially for all like the agents on the summit here who are team leaders who are building a business. You guys fire the bottom 10% of agents every year, even if they're bringing in deals, even if they're closing business. So why? Why would you fire somebody who's bringing in business?
Yeah, so I think how we started the firm, we realized that so we, as the DNA of our firm, we don't take on any new agents, we don't take on part-time licensees, and we believe that if we can build, just like you're picking an avatar or a buyer persona for your client, we have what we call the TELUS DNA. The TELUS DNA is very specific, where agents are hyper collaborative, hyper focused on their success and their growth, and are willing to let go of the things that are not revenue generating. So we want to build a firm where we can allow people to go do what they do best, which is negotiating deals, talking to clients, or taking time off, and for the firm to do everything else. What we've realized, Andrey, is that the good agents, when they start to do that, they're like, wow, I don't need an assistant. I don't need another buyer's agent. I've had team leaders who've had 10, 12 people on their team, shrink their team and the overhead down to 3, 4 people, and double and triple their business because they take advantage of our infrastructure. What happens with people at our firm that are bringing in deals that are not producing at a level that we want them to, is they hog resources significantly, taking away the advantage of the bigger agents, and the appreciation of what they have is not there either. So not only you start to have an attitude problem, it becomes I'm not producing because TELUS doesn't give me the tools problem, when they look around and see everybody else succeeding. So what we have found is that, and Andrey, a lot of times I'll have this conversation and be like, hey, Mr. Agent, what happened? You didn't even hit your X number that you set aside for yourself this year. And he says, oh, I had a tough year. My family struggled with this. I'll be back on track next year. That's a fun conversation. I don't mind having that, right? Then I say, how can I help you? Let's put a plan in place. Let's get some accountability. Let's get some structure. Let's get you focused. Let's use the tools. But when we have the flip and disregard for the culture of the firm, the ability to stay productive and to stay here, stay focused, and to double, triple your business every year, we just don't want that, because I think that you're not the average of the 5% you spend people with. You're you want to be the average of the 5 people you want to be with, right? And
Right,
so,
right.
so there's no way we can continuously innovate. There's no way me having this conversation with you, or me going on a listing appointment, or me spending time building a piece of software is actually going to be exciting to somebody who's closing 1 deal a year. And if they're not closing a certain number of deals a year, they probably just don't fit. They're great people, but we're just not a model match for them.
Got it. Okay. Gotcha. What would you consider, what do you guys focus on in your culture as revenue producing activities? What are the optimal activities that a top producer in your firm is engaging in primarily? Where's most of their time going?
Yeah, very simple, right? You're either prospecting, managing your database. That's number 1. You're negotiating deals. That's number 2. You're being a quarterback for your business, basically telling people what to do, or you're chilling out. Those are the only 4 things an agent should be doing: prospecting and managing your database, making sure the deals in escrow are getting closed, being a quarterback, saying, hey, are my marketing pieces going out? Great, tell us, take care of my marketing pieces. Or is my lead generation going out? Great, tell us, because we can't read an agent's mind. And then chilling out. I think a lot of agents don't bake in downtime into their business. That's why they come in wired all the time. And I see agents, the reason why they're struggling or they're not focused is because since they don't have a boss and they don't have a work week, they can work all the time. They have unstructured time to actually take structured time off. They're unable to rejuvenate in any way. And that's really, really tough. I think the discipline needs to come when you either prospect and manage your database, you negotiate deals, you be the quarterback for your business, or you chill the heck out. If you're not doing those things, it never works.
That is so interesting that you went there, because it's such it feels, now I understand, I feel like I understand some of the science behind it, but that feels like such and here's a $10 word, feels like such a juxtaposition of saying we axe the bottom 10%, right? Every year, but one of the most important things, or the 4 most important things agents can do, is chill out.
Yeah.
Right. So it's so interesting that in a very high performance, high productivity culture like the ones that you've created at TELUS Properties, at TELUS, that you guys value chilling out as one of the 4 key things that an agent should be doing.
Andrey, I'll tell you this. I have an agent who is awesome. He's been with the firm like 6-7 years. We designed his business together because he has business in his family in Cabo, Mexico. He spends 9 months out of the year in Cabo. Last year, he did $50 million in business. 9 months out of the year in Cabo. He has no assistant.
So he sold 2 homes?
no assistant, no office. He lives in Newport when he's down here. No assistant, no office. He just had his first child. He's back, but he's maybe in the States 3 months out of the year. He did $50 million in production, and he lived in Cabo. And he would send me pictures saying, hey bro, the swell's pretty good. And I'm like, I hate you, And it's great because whenever you get them on the phone, their first things, hey Sharran, how's it going? How's your family? So they're in a great state of mind. And the reason they're calling is for you to be a resource. The reason they're calling is not for them to whine. Our agents, like when my agent calls me, like I know every agent of the firm, unless they've joined in the last, 10, 15 days and I've not met them. I can text any agent of the firm and request or influence them to do anything because of the significant value that we provide. And they know that too. Like we have a 100% open door policy. So any agent can email me, schedule an appointment, do whatever they want. But we know for sure we have an ability to add value because we know that they're either going to take that advice and kick it up a notch, or they're going to, down and out. And that's totally okay because it gives me a chance to do that. Gotcha.
I like that. Yeah, and also when they're in a good place mentally and emotionally and energy-wise, energy management is so important. And we don't have time to really unpack all that, but what you're saying is so important because then that, again, carries over to certainty, confidence, and swagger. I think when you have good energy levels, you're more relaxed and playful, and playfulness and a relaxed, playful state helps you create confidence and swagger, right?
Yeah, and I'll just throw something out to you guys. So about a year ago, I was really struggling to one of the things that I had some health issues and I wanted to wake up earlier, create some space for myself, some time for myself. And I was really having a hard time waking up in the morning. So I reached out to a couple of our agents and said, hey, could you help me with some accountability? I want to wake up at 5 a.m. every day. How about I call you? And they're like, well, what are you going to say? It's kind of weird to call me at 5 a.m. And I said, well, I'll come up with something of value. I'll come up with something fun, something inspirational. Let's just do it for a week and see how it goes. So we did it for a week. So we woke up at 5. I had like a 3-minute message. I would wake up, I would call them, we would conference 3 people, and it would be either fun or inspirational or personal or whatever. And then everybody on the call basically said, hey, do you mind if I invite a few more people? So that started happening, and we do it at 5 a.m. It's for 5 minutes every day at 5 a.m. We currently have 180 people on the call for 5 minutes at 5 a.m. We call it the 5 a.m. Club. It happens every weekday at 5 a.m. for 5 minutes. People have changed their lives. One of the guys used that as an ability to lose 70 pounds. A third of the call is agents. A third of the call is just random professionals that people invited, family members that I don't even know. And a third of the call is my network of principals and CEOs that are on the call. If you miss a day, you're out of the calls. You can't be on the calls anymore. So it's just a 100% honor system. So you're making a commitment to being on the calls.
Right.
And it's 5 minutes at 5 a.m. You just have to jump on anywhere you're in the world. And like I had a lady who was in Texas. There was a tornado, and I can hear her in the background, and she's on the call. It's amazing. And I don't know 2/3 of the people on the call because anybody can invite anybody, and they just do it with via commitment. But our Facebook page just lights up because the conversations, Andrey, are around mindfulness, energy management, staying focused, goals, personal development, and saying, hey, if I can set up my life and my focus in a very thoughtful way at 5 a.m, then I've really created great space for me to execute on the rest of the day. And I'd tell you, it's probably the single most, apart from my family, et cetera, it's probably the single most, my single biggest accomplishment is doing this call. Probably I've done it like 220 days in a row. Single biggest accomplishment in my life, because I never thought I would ever be able to do it. And now I have an accountability of 181 people to do it too. So
nice.
I'm on every morning at 4:59 with 3 to 5 minute message, and we're off.
So you're up at 4:30, really?
Yeah, I'm up about at 4:40, 4:45. Yeah.
Yeah. I like that. When I had needed to really buckle down and get some things moving about a year and a half ago, I would wake up at 5 a.m. every morning and then hit the miracle morning every morning. I don't know if you've heard of it, but I did that for over 90 days in a row consecutively. And the momentum you get out of that is incredible. Winning the day by lunch is incredible. That's what happens. You win the day by lunch. If you're up at 5 a.m. and you're hitting the ground running, you win the day by lunchtime, like hours even. Like by 10 a.m., you've basically done more work than you would normally do if you woke up and got out at like 8 or 9. And then the day has so much momentum to it. It's nuts. You're riding a wave. You're just riding away for the rest of the day. You feel so productive. You're like, I'm a closer. Calls are better. You got swagger. See, there's that word again. You just feel better. So
yeah. And and my partners make fun of me because they're all early risers, and they're like, hey, so now what's happened is our entire email chain for the partners has like switched from 7 a.m. to like 11 a.m. to 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. I'm like, oh my God, it's like I could never get away from this.
Funny. Well, I appreciate you coming on and sharing, man. This has been a lot of fun. This has been pure gold on the 10 categories for listing presentations, and also talking about just really, I didn't even realize didn't know where we would go with, the conversation about management, firing the bottom 10%, but energy management and energy state is definitely something critical and important. So thanks for coming on. Thanks for supporting the summit and for being so open about everything.
Hey man, I appreciate it. And so if anybody on the, who's listening is interested in the 5 a.m. just for accountability, they're welcome to come on. It's 5 a.m. club.
How do we find it?
It's 5amclub.net.
Oh, okay. There's an actual site for it.
Yeah. So it's just easy. It tells you the story and got a bunch of testimonials. There's no money or anything. It's just a commitment. And it's a self-paced thing. You just sign up. I put you in the Facebook group. I send you a call number, and off we go. Right.
5amclub.net. So then, if you're on the East Coast, then it's 8 a.m. technically.
That is correct.
Got it. Correct.
Okay. And so, but again, I wanted to thank for having me on. A lot of the stuff that the reason I'll tell you this, Andrey, about 3 years ago, we would not have shared any of this information because it's not proprietary. But we spent a lot of blood, sweat, and tears putting all of this together.
Right.
But this year, the partners just decided that we would give everything away. So all our internal, we do one coaching call a day, and they're all for all our agents. And now we made a podcast out of it, and we give everything away. So we put all our internal recordings on our TELUS podcast. So what you're hearing now, many of this stuff is already on in different pieces on there. So there's a plethora of information available. People can sign up to get the podcast if they want off our website. It's all free. We just decided that we'd give everything away because it's making us better, as it's forcing us to come up with new stuff every time.
Where is the podcast?
It's on iTunes. It's called the TELUS Properties Podcast.
TELUS Property, TELES Properties podcast. You just
Yep.
go to iTunes and check that out. Awesome.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's hundreds of episodes. We uploaded everything from the last 3 years into it.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for doing that. On behalf of the industry and everybody here at the Gear Listing Summit, thank you for contributing like that back to the industry and just giving back. That's awesome.
Yeah, of course. Hey, thank you for having me on, and whatever I can do to be helpful to anybody that's listening, I'm very happy to do.
Fantastic. Thanks, Ron.
Thanks, Andrey.